Hi, everyone. Victoria Alai here with Everyone Counts.World. I'm so excited to have Edward Vicedo here with us today. Edward is an executive level coach, and he's been doing this for many years. And today we're really going to be talking a little bit about why it's so important to find our values and how to implement those once we do find them. So, Edward, can you take a minute before we get going on that to tell us a little about yourself and your background?
Victoria, thank you very much for having me. I'm so excited to participate in this conversation because understanding and living your values is so important for my own personal journey, as well as for the clients that I work with. Victoria, I am a leadership and transitions coach, and I help individuals who are feeling stuck, frustrated, isolated to be able to motivate and lead their teams and prioritize work life balance at the same time. I work with senior managers, I work with general managers, VPs in a variety of service industries, and I help teams as well as executives. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a joy to have you here. And I've known other people you've helped in the past that has made a big difference. So I'm just curious, what brought you to this type of work? Was it something where you were looking for your own answers and stumbled into it, or something you've had a vision to do your whole life? What's your own story a little bit? Yeah.
I never thought I was going to be an executive coach. That was not in my dream and vision when I graduated from high school. Actually, I thought I was just going to start my own empire in the business world. And I got my business degree. And while I was going to get my business degree, I put myself through college as a waiter. After making money and being successful in the hospitality world, I thought I could do this for a living. And so I got my culinary degree, I got my master's in hotel restaurant tourism in variety aspects of the hospitality industry. I spent nearly 30 years in the hospitality industry.
Amazing.
All was said and done, though, and I felt that I reached really the pinnacle of my career, as many people do. They have an identity with an attachment to their career. And all of a sudden, there was a point where I felt misaligned. I felt extraordinary stress. I had enjoyed my work for so much, but I was feeling stuck, frustrated. I wasn't getting the impact that I wanted. And as I was standing in front of some of my senior executives, I was a VP of operations at the time, I was trying to motivate and inspire and hold people to high standards. But all of a sudden, I had this panic attack. I had this moment of extraordinary stress and overwhelm and intense emotion. And Victoria, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but perhaps some individuals who are listening here, while in front of these managers, I had this intense emotion, a cry. You know those ugly cries where you can't get your breath and you are over and you just can't express anything. And it was just a moment of an inability to have composure, to express myself. And that was an expression, a physical expression of high stress, frustration with myself and others, overwhelm, disappointment, perhaps even anger and sadness, words that I couldn't even have access to. And it was that moment that I was experiencing burnout.
First of all, I really appreciate hearing about this experience because it's deeply personal and it shows what was underneath it all. Being in front of the executives, being an executive yourself, and having that be the moment that you would experience this a guttural, oh, what the heck is going on here? I have no idea. And you just couldn't proceed. It sounds like it was just like a natural thing in a way when I hear about it from this side of where you are.
Yes, absolutely. And my boss at the time suggested that I get a coach. I had never
Ah,
been introduced to coaching. I didn't know what coaching was. And through coaching, I was able to clarify what was really important for me. What were the things that I was missing in life? Where did I seem misaligned? What was I not accomplishing in my career, my fun and enjoyment, my relationships to my wife, my family, my was I healthy? And I realized as those hard questions were being asked of me that my life was not fulfilling, it was not balanced. I had ideas of what I wanted to do with my life, but if I continued with the trajectory and the behaviors that I was showing, I was never going to get to fulfillment. And my coach helped me understand, what am I passionate about? What am I good at? And ultimately, what are my values? What are the things that I really find to be important, that really inform me how I want to experience life and work? And this is why we're having this conversation today, Victoria, because that personal journey about values led me to becoming an executive coach and also wanting me to give others what I experienced. So
That's
that is how I got here today.
amazing, and I love that that's one of your email addresses, "Be amazing." And it's interesting too how you were basically successful at your former career, and you followed the path, and you even got into high-level management in addition to actually learning how to do culinary arts yourself, and then just one day, it sounds like it was very surprising to you when it happened, and then the coach or your supervisor or president of the company or whatever suggested that you get a coach yourself. And then that really helped you to take these pieces apart because it sounds like the crisis in front of the other executives was just like, what is going on here? This overwhelm, this what's happening. I'm not myself. This situation just feels untenable. And then fortunately, you had somebody that had some insight. And so when you got to this other coach just for yourself, at that point, you started looking at your values and everything. And at what point did you start to realize, wait a minute, this is falling together into the place that makes me think I might want to be a coach?
I experienced so much joy and a transformation going through coaching. I felt safe. I felt challenged. I felt empowered, absolutely, through a coaching experience. What the coach had helped me realize was that, yes, you were successful in your career and you experienced so many wonderful things. And what got you here today was amazing, but is that necessarily what you want and need moving forward? And asking that question made me realize, yeah, you go through change. And sometimes you don't have to be a victim of change. Circumstances don't have to be something that is done to you. Changes can be something that is for you or something that you can proactively create. And it's small changes that you can make over time with your coach. Nothing happened overnight. For me, it took a year and a half for me to rebrand myself, re-identify with something new. It took me 30 years to get to the point of this crisis. And I am sure overnight a crisis did not just appear. And so
Reality.
yeah, it was just small stresses that just added up. I happened to experience a crisis moment, but I'm going to offer, if you don't have to go through a crisis moment and you can recognize in the moment things that you don't like and you can change them before it becomes a crisis, why not take that opportunity?
Absolutely. And I can identify a lot with what you are experiencing, especially one thing that you've been mentioning is feelings. And that the feelings must have been some kind of an indicator to these values on some level. Because at first you talked about feeling overwhelmed and sad and angry and some of these types of feelings. But then after going through the coaching and really digging deeply into what's my entire life balance and what is the most important to me, and am I really operating on my highest and best level for what I can contribute to the world in addition to what will bring me the most happiness. And then I start hearing these new feelings, joy and abundance, this desire to give back. So, do you think the feelings were any kind of a little helper to you along the way, even though they were tough at first, to actually make that kind of a transformation yourself?
Absolutely 100% emotions were critical. I would have identified myself as a strategic thinker, as a doer. I was always in my head and always felt that I need to solve something. To be honest, I wasn't in touch with my feelings, in touch with my emotions. The basic vocabulary that I had access to describe what I was feeling was happy, angry, sad. And that was the extent of my ability to express my emotions. Through coaching, being able to understand subtle differences or new words that you can label and clarify what you're feeling. Beyond sadness, there are other words you can use, disappointed, and disappointment is different than sadness. And being able to label different nuances of emotion helps you get clear about what you want and what you can ask for. My coach helped me label my emotions differently. And as a result, I was able to ask for different
It
things.
sounds like that experience really expanded your awareness of what was possible too. Just even by exploring the feelings, it's, oh, there's more going on here.
And we're just
um,
so excited.
yeah, what's happening with me is I'm already ahead like 3 questions because I'm, like, so excited about having this conversation. But getting back to it, so then basically you decided that you yourself would give back and become a coach, which just sounds so, like, wonderful, and having spoken to you, it sounds like that really was your passion on a much higher level even than working in a specific industry like the culinary or the hospitality industry. What was it like when you were first finding out what your values were? And maybe before that, why don't you tell me a little bit about what is a value? You described it before, but for people that might just be starting out, can you give an example of what's an old value that you had, maybe that you switched to a new value or like that?
Sure. First and foremost, values are the core principles and beliefs that basically tell you how you want to behave or what decisions you can make. Clarity on your values influence your attitudes and how you experience life. They reflect what's really meaningful and important for you. Some examples of values could be adventure, security, fun, power, success. Those are all examples. Before going through coaching, I may have latched on to influence, or I may have really resonated with success in general. But that changed. I realized that success and influence to me, as when people ask me as a 23-year-old, what do I want? I said, I want to have my own hospitality empire. That's what I thought success and influence look like. But later on, I realized that really wasn't what was important for me. I didn't want to have my own empire. I didn't want to necessarily have restaurants all over the world. At 23, I may have, but when I dug down, I realized that success is not necessarily, or my interpretation of success at the time is really what I wanted.
And that's something that I can really relate to is that when I was younger, I had certain values that I was possibly picking up from my parents or from society in general. And I think that I went with those for many years. If you have a certain amount of money, if you have a certain type of a title, or if you work in a certain industry, then you're a success. And so I think that I know when I went through some major transformations myself, looking at my values, I had to dig deeply and say, if it was a relationship or if it was a career, whatever, it's what are the things that I don't want? And sometimes I had to start there to find my values. And then I went to, okay, what's the opposite of that? How do you help people find their values?
First and foremost, acknowledging that our values, whether we understood what they were or are influenced by our family, by our environment, by politics, by our communities. And when we're younger, we're told what we should believe in. As we get older, we discover what's important for ourselves and how they may differ from the people who are once important to us. When I help a client discover one of their values or to understand what values are. And I invite the people who are listening to this now to explore what's a situation that really triggered you, made you angry or happy, and that has some intense emotion about it. And think about that. In that moment that triggered you, who did what that created that experience for you? Okay. You know, and just sit with that for a moment and imagine that kind of experience. I'm going to use an example that in a work environment, when an individual may be always late to your meetings, right? Right? That may trigger a lot of people. Okay. Wow, this person is always late to this meeting. Now, everybody may have a different experience or different interpretation of what's going on here about why someone is late to your meeting. Okay. So one person may say, wow, this person is really disrespectful. Okay. Another person may say, wow, that person seems really overwhelmed, right? Wow, that boss of this person never holds them accountable. Okay. And as you look at your interpretations of disrespect, overwhelm, a lack of accountability, that may inform you about that may be one of your values. So when you say, oh, that person is disrespectful, that says maybe one of my values is respect, right? If you're saying that, wow, that person it seems to be overwhelmed, notice it's not so much more of a judgment, but still it shows what's important. Instead of overwhelm, maybe you want for that person balance. So balance may be a value for you, right?
Right.
The thing is, if you see that someone's not being held accountable, it could be as simple as accountability is a value of yours. And simply by asking and reflecting, where was I triggered? It may inform you what's important to me. And that important experience is one of your values.
I appreciate your explanation because it really brings up a lot for me in that the most important changes that I've made in my values came from those tough situations or from some of the roughest or the most happy situations that I encountered, as you said, were actually kind of signaling me towards what I really wanted and didn't want. And so a lot of times I think people try to put these things in the past of I don't want to think about this incident or whatever because it was too triggering to me or whatever. However, it's those that are the gold mines, it seems like, to being able, if you can actually go back and look at them objectively, then you can see, oh, and maybe bring it back to this says something about me. Because another thing I noticed through your example is many people might be thinking about this other person. Okay, this other, their entire focus is on this person's late, they're disrespectful, but at no time are they taking personal responsibility for, but what does that say about me? And so your example is so powerful because that's really where the happiness came in for me was when I started taking nothing personally. And I actually took a class on pathwaytohappiness.com. It's like a free podcast on how not to take things personally. And I listened to it probably 1,000 times, maybe 400. I'm not exaggerating because it was so difficult. But it reminds me of what you're talking about, which is if there's a way that I can look at also what my obstacles might be, like I might be having self doubts. Maybe from childhood, I ended up thinking I'm not quite good enough. Or does that ever come in when people are saying, I'd like to have this value, but I just don't see how I can have that happen in my life?
Values do not necessarily have to be something that you're experiencing right now. They can be aspirational as well. For example, when I say talking about what triggers you, you can look at also things that you really want to do. For example, I want to hike Machu Picchu. That would give me so much more excitement. But why? Maybe because it's a sense of adventure. Maybe it's a sense of challenge. Those could also inform you, even though you're not experiencing it right now, something that I want more of in my life or more in my career, that something that I could have and ask for and seek.
So, alternative to just having a panic attack like I did when I was younger and you had in your background, it can also be something that's a dream or a goal or a vision of some kind that can help you to formulate what these real values are. It's something that's speaking to you, that's drawing you nearer of I'd really like to climb this mountain or whatever. And one thing that I think is interesting is by putting that example out of, oh, I'd like to climb this mountain, it makes me think about what about that is interesting to me. So, like your previous example, why is it bothering me that this person is coming in late? This example is if I want to climb Mount Everest or something, then why do I want to climb it? Because it's a challenge. Like you said, oh, well, it's not something that a lot of people do. So maybe I'd get a little bit of, you know, notoriety in my circles or whatever. Or
Mhm.
maybe it's something that I just feel drawn to spiritually. So spirituality is an important aspect. And so that's the thing that I am hearing from you is if people think of a dream as well or some goal that they might have that might even seem unreachable, that will help them understand their values.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you use those examples of something that they want, spirituality that they don't think that they have, or notoriety, or a sense of adventure, I'm going to offer that you probably have some of it inside of you already. You probably have some sort of spirituality in you. You probably already have some sort of adventure in you that is not being expressed. And perhaps what you're saying is, I recognize that and I want more of it. So I would never say that there is a complete absence of something in somebody, but rather it's just not being expressed right now.
So it might be laying dormant a little bit or it.
Absolutely.
And many times when I've been helping people with career, for instance, as a navigator, they will almost always know on some level what their dream is. And then the more that it means to them, the harder it is for them to pursue. It's almost like they'd rather fail by not trying than try and not achieve it. And because the fantasy is, I guess I can speak from my own experience too, the fantasy is more important than actually going and trying it. So when you have people that you work with and they start to get a sense of their real underlying desires and their values, what types of obstacles or challenges do they run into, especially if it's very meaningful to them?
The obstacles that are in the way, sometimes they can be external. My boss is setting up a roadblock, or geographically, what I want is so far away. I'm going to say that there is some external obstacles in many cases, but oftentimes the transformation realizes that many of the blocks, the obstacles, the things that are getting in the way are actually internal stuff, the limiting beliefs, having some ideas, an assumption, or maybe a specific behavior that you're doing is just not attainable for you. So, if we can address those limiting beliefs, those assumptions, those interpretations of what you think is getting in the way and reframe it, a little bit, then it is likely that we can experience those values a little bit more. In coaching, understanding what's getting in the way, what behaviors you could do to overcome those behaviors are attached oftentimes to the intense emotions or those thoughts that you're having. And if someone believes, I don't have the time to work out, for example,
Mhm, mhm.
time to cook healthy, maybe we can reframe that. I've chosen to reprioritize work instead of eating healthy. And then if we can address that, why are you choosing work over eating healthy? What is possible for you if you decided to choose to eat healthier or to work out? What would be different in your life? So, realizing that you don't have to be a victim to your thoughts, but instead choosing what's more appropriate for you at the time.
That's really interesting to me because in my experience, oftentimes I get these feelings, but I don't realize that what triggered them were thoughts. And many of them, particularly in the past, were limiting beliefs, as you talked about, such as, who do I think I am? going to do something. I'm getting out of my box that people told me this is the box you need to be in. And so I have, but then when you're grown up, it's no longer parents telling you what you should or shouldn't do. It's more of you become your own internal parent. And that's what I've noticed is that the thoughts are like, who do I think I am? That's a typical one that I've run into growing up in a situation where I felt like if I made everybody else okay and made them the star of the show, then I was okay and I was safe. And so I think that was one of the limiting beliefs I had was I was used to being the audience my whole life versus actually being out there and shining my light to share with people. And later on, what I know now is that if I withhold who I really am, and my passion, my vision, the things that I think might help other people get there quicker, like you said, then I'm actually doing a disservice to people. And so I think that that's another thing that I am really glad to talk about, these core beliefs, these narratives that we have towards ourselves that stand in the way. Oh, if I do my passion, I won't have enough money to put my child through college, for instance, or yeah, suddenly I'm going to find myself in a bad situation. But so that's one thing I wanted to talk about. If you had any thoughts about, have you experienced that the thoughts can sometimes dictate the emotions which lead to the actions, and you have to go back and see, what am I really thinking here, not just what am I feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. To go back to your example that you had just mentioned about not wanting to be center stage, not putting yourself out there, right? And just even that decision, you had said that if I don't put myself on center stage, I can be safe.
Right.
Yeah, I will be safer if I don't put myself on center stage.
Exactly. You got it.
And that thought creates this emotion, creates this behavior saying, you know what, I'm never going to put myself on stage. I'm never going to put myself on there. But then that value of safety was superseded later on. Instead of wanting to be safe, I can choose to highlight other individuals. I can put them on center stage. And we're reframing this a little bit. Instead of, I need to be safe, I want to acknowledge and support other individuals. It may look the same. You're not on center stage, but instead your experience of it is differently. Instead of stress, I'm not putting on my center stage, you're feeling excitement that, wow, I'm supporting others a little bit. So you are experiencing different values, safety versus support. All because of the thought of I will be safer or I will be supportive. And those thoughts create different emotions, different excitement levels, different behaviors. I hope that I explained that
Oh,
correctly.
absolutely. It makes a lot of sense to me. And also, what I hear from your description is that this is a natural process and it's something that happens over time as we go through life. In my case, I'm very grateful that things got so tough, like back when I had panic attacks and was trying to hold down work and be in a classroom. And now I don't have those, thank goodness. But you know why I don't have those is because I turned and I said, you know what, I'm going to make this almost like a degree. I'm going to find out how can I balance my life. And so it's, yes, I want to have a career and I want to have it in this particular direction and I'd like to have this kind of income. However, I also want to have serenity in the way that I operate day to day. And that's a high quality of life factor that became more important to me than what the job was. Does that make sense? But ironically, the more that I focused on these other areas, exercise, meditation, getting to a place where I wasn't so triggered by social environments or work environments and I didn't have the panic attacks anymore, that just helped out the work. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that it's interesting how people might feel this kind of laser focus on I've got to get to this level, I've got to do this, I've got to make this kind of income. And then in the meantime, they are basically dealing with a lot of panic and a lot of unhappiness and taking things personally, and instead of stepping back and saying, wait a minute, what are the areas that are also, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if career and my identity is so far down the rabbit hole with career that I can't even stop it to say, wait a minute, maybe it's because I'm not eating well. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe there's an opportunity as we grow and get older to stop and say, wait a minute, what else is out of balance here? Let me put some focus over there. And then coincidentally, the work life improves. Does that ever happen when you work with people?
Absolutely. I stress the importance to know your values. But the what's really important is understanding that you are more than just one value. You are much more complex. In addition to serenity, you probably want more things in your life. When I work with clients, I help them clarify not just one value, but actually their top five values, and understand that some of the values that you espouse or you want may actually compete with each other. It's really interesting. It's okay that you may want, as an example, adventure and safety. It's possible to want both of those, but you can see how they may compete with each other, right? And then understanding and realizing, yeah, I have complex values. You get to choose in the moment, in a decision, in an experience, which one do I want to experience today? Which one do I want to experience this moment in my career, right? When I am out with my friends, maybe I want to experience adventure. Maybe I want to try new things. Because in that area of my life, that value adventure is really important. But at work, maybe I want to experience more safety. Maybe that means I don't want to put myself out there a little bit more, right? But imagine this, Victoria. What if I decided in my career, you know what? Today, I want to experience adventure at work, where I may have decided that it's going to be strictly in my personal life. What would adventure look like in my career? It may be volunteering for a new project where I have no skill set whatsoever, right? Simply because it's exciting and new. Now that I am now valuing adventure versus safety, and it still brings me excitement and joy. We get to interpret what our definition of that particular value looks like for today, and then choosing how I want to experience it.
That's fantastic, and I also hear you talking about the balance and the time and the place that you might basically end up being some kind of a high risk ice climbing person that's going to be doing that on the weekends, and then you're an accountant at work. And so the thing is, what you're saying is that you can always bring some of these values into each of the settings that you might want to and just expand a little bit. And maybe that would bring you more joy and more fulfillment than just trying to play it safe all the time.
Absolutely. And again, if safe is the word you want to use, safe might be the word that you and I choose. It might be another value that people are seeking in their own experience.
I took this course in college on women artists. And Georgia O'Keeffe, when she went out to the desert, she left New York City, left all her friends, got rid of all her formal training in artwork, and she basically started from scratch. And she was by herself in a little cabin. And later on, she came back and she said, after creating her beautiful signature pieces, that she was scared to death the whole time, but she did it anyway. And so that's the other thing, is that you can get a sense of, okay, maybe one of my values is going to be a little stressed. However, what's the payoff for taking a risk? And I'll tell you, one thing in my life has been, I'd rather try it and fail and come back and say, okay, this is, or not even fail. I don't believe in failure. I believe either something's a fit or it's not a fit. And maybe it's a fit for a while, like your career was first, your first career, and then later on it's no longer a fit. But my experience has been that I try not to avoid things because of the fear. I try not to completely avoid things because of the fact that I'll always wonder what would have happened if I would have actually given it a shot. And at the same time, what's interesting is when I was younger, I did climb a lot of 14,000-foot mountains, and I was like out there putting myself at risk. And then later, now, after I became a mom, I decided, you know what? That's not such a good idea, because what if something happens to me? And so I don't even miss it today. But at the time, it seemed like it was my whole identity. So to me, it was actually more courageous to stop doing those types of activities, if that makes sense. And
Absolutely.
say, I love my life as a mother. And I just feel like now I take calculated risks. And so I see what you're saying about Just be open and don't put things down, because when I was younger, I was a big career person and I didn't have kids till my late 30s. And I used to think that the women having kids in their 20s and everything were selling out and they weren't doing. And then later, when I became a mom myself, I was like, you know what? They had it right all along. And it's so funny that, of course, I can be both a career person and a mom. But do you see what I'm saying? I really had to revisit my belief system in order to end up being a parent, which really expanded my world enormously.
Expanding your world and being curious and being open. You used a word that I really resonate with, and that's wonder. Okay. And the wonder is, I wonder if my life would have been different. I wonder if I had made different choices, right? Part of understanding your values a little bit mitigates the need to wonder. I am living my life right now. I am living my values. I am experiencing true fulfillment because this is what I'm seeking right now. For me, my values are curiosity, connection, integrity, growth, and joy. Those are my top five values. And when I ask the question, I wonder what my life would be like, I don't need to as much anymore. Right now, I can say I'm feeling fulfilled because I am experiencing connection. I am experiencing growth. I am experiencing joy. You know, and through a coaching relationship, you can work with your coach or with your client to say, rather than regretting what could have been or answering that question wonder, instead of regret about what could have been, going to fulfillment or seeking fulfillment about, I'm really satisfied. I am accomplishing everything I want that's aligned with my values. At the end of our life, we don't want to experience any regret a little bit. We can find fulfillment by living our values.
This sounds like why it's so key to understand our values. And it sounds like having a coach, and being a coach, you've probably seen the transformation in some of your clients when they found their top five values. What kind of an experience do you see people having when that light goes on?
The most transformative experience invite a lot of emotion. One of the most powerful questions that I have found to be impactful for the clients is, what surprised you most about discovering your values? And after a pause and after they're thinking about it, and sometimes it's with elated laughter, sometimes with it's a little bit sadness, is a surprise that their experience is misaligned with what they really want. Example,
Hmm.
somebody really wants connection. One of their top five values is connection. They realize that. And then what they're realizing is that their job is at a desk in a basement with low lighting. And now they're realizing, no wonder I hate my job. I am not experiencing connection in that sense. And that's an extreme example there. But that realization is, I'm saying that this is what I want in my life. And maybe I'm labeling it, but I'm not doing anything about it. I am being complacent about my experience. Now that I can really label it, wow, I am feeling extreme sadness that it's taken me long to find it. Or they're saying, wow, I am really seeing excitement and opportunity, and this is now where I can make a change. Intense sadness or extreme joy, that intense experience and emotion inspires change. I want more of this excitement, or I really don't want this sadness. And that is the intense experience that many people go through when they're discovering their values.
Yeah. It just sounds, as a coach, do you feel like you're a midwife to people's experiences where they get to witness some of these transformations?
Yes. And with my understanding of a midwife, I've never been a midwife, but I understand stories. My interpretation of midwife, I don't do all the hard work. I facilitate the individual going through the hard work to come to the other side of extreme joy, extreme satisfaction. These moments, like giving birth, I would imagine, are intense and require a lot of support. There are moments where we feel unsafe, or moments where we feel that we're not sure we can do this. As a midwife, executive midwife, and emotional midwife, to use metaphor, I get to create a safe space for them to experience this growth and joy.
And having gone through it yourself, you know what it's like to even be happy in a career and then find yourself at this crossroads and then go into something you never would have considered. And because you've done it yourself as well, you must have a lot of encouragement that you can offer these people. Do some of the people that come to you feel trapped in their situations?
Absolutely. I use the word stuck. Some people use trap. Some people feel they use the word victim, right? In my own personal story, after being in the hospitality industry, going through that transformative experience, I chose to leave the hospitality industry. I don't want to necessarily imply that in order for you to live your values, that you have to leave the industry or your career.
Right.
You can make a different choice. You can choose to transform your experience, or maybe have harder conversations with your boss or your team to change your experience. Instead, you can choose how you want to react. I chose to leave. Other individuals may want to stay within their company, maybe a different role, or maybe stay even in their role, but be very clear about the boundaries they want to set for themselves. Maybe other people want to stay in the industry, maybe a different company. Your expression of aligning yourself to your values may look very different for you than for other individuals. And I am not one to say that my way is the right way. Your experiences, what's important for you, the priorities that you have right now, that's going to inform you what the decisions that you're going to make. If you can align them with your values, you're going to enjoy that experience so much more.
So this is wonderful. You've lined out all these options. I can stay at my current company. I can stay in my current position. I can switch positions or roles, maybe get a more public role, like you used in your example earlier. I can go to another company. I can change my field. It just really sounds like this is why it's so important to get back to what are my values and find those out because we don't learn this in grade school. People don't come to us. They usually are telling us, this is what you need to do to be successful. And you better get your homework in instead of like where you're at. Now, what would you say are some of the most common reasons or the biggest reason why people are motivated to contact you?
Ah, so such a great question, and not just for me as a person, but just to any coach. Discovering that what's possible out there is within their reach right now, and once they realize that they may not be able to do it alone, they're going to reach out for support, reach out for help. As an executive coach, many people reach out to me for their profession, for their career, for how to lead better. But other people choose support differently. Maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a fitness instructor, it could even be a pastor, wherever they want to find support. People find me because I put myself out there. What I want to be known for is to help leaders who are feeling stuck and frustrated that they can't manage and lead their teams, that they are unable to communicate what's really important for them, to get alignment on their vision. When people discover that's what I do, either through referrals or through visiting my website, or maybe even hearing me speak, and if that message resonates with them, wow, I don't need to feel stuck. I don't need to feel isolated. I don't need to feel frustrated as I'm trying to motivate and inspire my team. Maybe Ed is the right guy to help me. And that's why they reach out to me.
That sounds, and you seem to really enjoy it. Helping people to reach their visions and helping them to get over these hurdles that they thought were unmanageable. So, what it sounds like though is that they have an idea of some kind, either something they're running from, like this is uncomfortable and I'm having a hard time with it and I'm not getting the communication with my team like I'd like, the vision's not following what I'm trying to communicate, or it's people moving towards something that it's
Mhm.
like, "Hey, this is my vision to do this kind of a business or whatever, and I'm just too afraid to take that leap." And so it sounds like you've dealt with a lot of different reasons why people do come. And I know we're winding down, but I'm curious, one of the number one values that people have around money, is income. Is so have you run into anything, especially with people that you work with in leadership? In my book anyway, I wrote something about people some people reach a point where it's never enough. Do you know what I mean? Like that they aren't really taking full inventory of what their values are and what they're really trying to accomplish in their lives. But it's, I'm not going to be okay unless I reach this level, or my buddy over here is making 100,000 more than I am a year, or whatever, has a yacht and I don't have my yacht yet. Can you speak to money at all?
So
Because that's such a core, and especially people that haven't had the millions of dollars that possibly some of your clients have had. People that were making like up to 100,000 were much happier than people under 100,000 because of basic needs and everything, and this depends on where you live. But people between 100 and a million, the people with a million may, were 2-5% happier maybe, but people with 10 million were maybe 1% happier. But after 10 million, there wasn't as much more happiness related to all the toys. And so how do some of you and your clients navigate that, so that they make sure that they're really watching their values and not just trying to keep up with the Joneses?
it's a wonderful and extraordinary question. And oftentimes, whether it's life coaching or executive coaching, the question of money will always come up, right? And it's a great exploration to explore what is it about more money that is so important for you. And oftentimes, it's not the dollar amount. It's not $1,000 or $1 million or $100 million, but actually, what does money give you, or what does money allow you to do? Some people say more money will allow me to show my greatness.
Yep.
Seeking more money means more power, and that's what's really interesting. And then the question is, how much money do you need? But the question is more related to how much power do you really want? How much
Right.
power do you really need? And when we can address that question a little bit, it gives some insight, and not about how much money you have, but instead, what is it in your heart or in your soul or in your mind that you need to feel fulfilled a little bit? And sometimes there's not enough power that somebody can have. Other people, I'm fine with only making $60,000 a year. And you ask them, why is 60,000 enough? Because it allows me to provide enough for my husband and I. We don't have kids, and I just want to be comfortable. And notice, how much comfort do you need is an entirely different question than how much power you need. It's not the question of how much money is enough, but what does the money allow you to do? And what does the money allow you to experience? That is the more important question that gives people more insight about what's more meaningful to them. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. What I hear you saying is that when people bring that up as their primary stress, for instance, that might not be really their deepest underlying desire that they're addressing. And that you help to ask the questions, again, being a midwife, telling them what to do, is you try to find out from your clients, what's your true underlying desire here? What is this bringing you? What is this meaning to you? And maybe they are just trying to feel like they're okay. They need validation in the world, and that was the way they were doing it. And maybe they can actually, they're trying to get an invisible need met like that with a visible result, such as assets or something like that. And if they can step back, they can see, hey, what's really important to me, not what society is telling me is successful or my parents might think it's successful. It's what's really bringing me the happiness, and where am
That's
I
right.
lacking? And so, what I hear you saying, the other thing I really liked about your description is that as a coach, you don't have judgment about what is really motivating people. If people are motivated by power of some kind, then that's legitimate, and it's good to validate that so that they can be on their path to continuing to find it and to see, how are you going to measure your power? What does that look like to you? And so that's what's really interesting to me, is that working with a coach like yourself, people can actually to what is it really going to take and go back to these 5 values that you help them pull together and not invalidate them. Not, do you ever find yourself with biases of, oh, if I was this person, I would do this instead? Or do you try to be open to, this is not my life. I'm going to be as present as possible with this person and keep my biases out of it or my underlying desires?
I laugh because my answer is yes, I have biases. And yes, I can be open and curious. Both are possible.
Exactly.
I'm a human first before I'm a coach. Of course, I have some biases or perspectives because that's based off of my experiences and how I grew up or how I was told to live my life. But I can't let my experiences lead to arrogance and ego that I know what's best. And what perhaps as a coach is releasing the idea that I know what's best. Actually, I don't know what's best for you, Victoria, for my friends or anything. It would be wrong for me to suggest I know what's best because the individual, the client, knows what's best for them. Trust that their unique experiences and their wisdom and the things that they have been through inform them of what's best for them. If power is really important for them, who am I to say? Power is not important to me at this point, but let them be curious about what an expression of power may look like. Power could look like being the president of the United States, right? That, but as you well know, as you've seen over the centuries, people experience power and express power differently. And we get to explore and be curious, how would you like to exert your power? Or what would be your experience of comfort? Or what is your experience of integrity? Right? Whatever value you choose, respect, and let you be curious and discover what those values mean to you. It's irrelevant what my interpretation of each of those are because I'm not going to live your life. I'm not going to live your career. You have to live it. So live and design your life around the values that are important for you.
Oh, very well said. Very well said. And what I'm feeling like, I keep thinking of the 5 values, which is so simple in a way. It might not be simple to arrive at them. That's why coaches and support people are often really helpful to give that objective support in a nurturing environment, in a growing environment. One of the thoughts I had is if I had those 5 values defined, and I do have my values defined, and I think that this has worked for me. If I do have any decision that comes up or some kind of an uncomfortable situation, I can immediately flip to those 5 values in my mind and help myself make that decision by where is this decision landing where my values are? How do I match my values to this decision? And so you end up in a line of everything below this line is not matching my decisions, and everything above this line is matching my decisions. And like you said, sometimes one value may be prioritized over the other. So if I'm in the middle of a situation and I start to get anxious, I can think, wait a minute, where does this fit within my values? And it helps me reset as well, instead of thinking so much about what do these people think of me, or am I going to get that promotion or whatever, and just step back and say, wait a second, where does this fit within my value system? Because the last thing I want to do is worry about things that aren't even part of my value system.
Absolutely. And the first step is to get clarity. What are your values? If you're not sure, get support from a coach, maybe even ask your spouse, what do you think are important to me? What are you noticing that I'm expressing about what makes me happy or what makes me frustrated? Ask those questions, whether from a formal relationship through coaching or some people that you trust and love in other areas of your life. Ask.
Ex-
Yeah.
That's a great point. I know my sister years ago when we were working on our careers, one day I just told her, you seem happier outside. And she was about to go down a totally different path. And she started thinking, you know what? And she ended up with her dream job being a park manager at a state wildlife park. Is there anything else that you want to share with people that might be at that state where some of your clients are, of just they have this dream or this idea out there, there's something out there that they feel like maybe they could be doing. How do they start? How do they even find a coach? Or what suggestions would you make if somebody's like unhappy but doesn't have a connection yet?
To finding a coach is, or
To finding a coach, or to what steps can they take towards getting closer to that passion or to overcoming their fears to explore it?
the first step is to explore what would you get out of coaching? What would you seek from coaching? The answer could be to find more work life balance. The answer could be to advance my career. It could be to become healthier. Just ask yourself, what could you gain from that? And the beauty of the internet and doing searches, you can simply say, I want to improve my health. Where can I find a coach? It can be as simple as that, and you'll find many answers. For my case, I was off in the hospitality industry. You'd be surprised if you say, I'm looking for a hospitality coach. Maybe it will come up with 20 other 30 coaches who specialize in the hospitality industry. You would be surprised at what you can find. But first and foremost, look inside yourself. What would I like to be different in my life?
Right.
And when you can answer that question in any aspect of your life, you'll know who to seek, who can find support, who can provide support for you. And oftentimes, the major areas of life that people are asking for support: career, relationships, finances, health, passion and purpose, fun and enjoyment. Those are the major categories that people want something different in their life. After all is said and done though, Victoria, I'm going to say I'm a leadership and an executive coach. And oftentimes, the first topics that present themselves are often in those realms. But after 4 or 5 sessions, everything turns into life coaching. Everything
Interesting.
turns, turns into, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in my life? What's getting in my way? And those questions are universal in your life and in your career. So everything eventually turns into answering the question, who do I want to be? And for me, coaching is aspiring to be your best amazing self.
Oh, I love that. And what would you say to the people that are used to pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps? They think it's a weakness to go outside for help. What would you say to somebody who is hesitant because they're feeling like they're somehow failing by having to go to somebody outside?
If you probably have seen many interviews of the most successful individuals out there. And if an interviewer asks them, what is a key to your success? Many of them would say, surround yourself with great people who know more than you in their own zone of expertise. With that in mind, look at yourself. You don't need to know all the answers. And part of growth and part of learning something new involves discomfort, involves pushing yourself beyond your perceived limitations a little bit. If you don't push yourself or you don't stretch a little bit and get out of your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. You don't have to go through discomfort alone. Seek support. It's okay. Feeling that you can do it on your own actually may prevent you from doing something faster. Explore getting support so that things take you less time. Why struggle when you don't have to? Get the support that you need.
I love that. I have really enjoyed talking with you and discussing values that are so important to all of us for having these happy, free, abundant lives, sane, having sanity. So, thank you so much for taking your time. And where can people find you if they want to
Well,
catch up with you or want to follow up with you?
Victoria, thank you very much for the opportunity. I enjoyed this conversation as well, and it reminds me of what's important for me in this conversation. I'm experiencing my values of connection, integrity, growth, joy, curiosity. So I am
Aw,
living this as well. If somebody would like to explore their own values or any aspect of their career of life, they can find me using my website address, and it's simple. It's my name, edwardvicedo.com. And you can be curious and discover what's possible. And that's what I would like. Let's discover what's possible.
I love that, Edward. I hope we get the chance to talk with you again about other topics around coaching and around getting to your life's passion. In the meantime, have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to our next talk.
Thank you very much. Be
Thank
amazing.
you. Bye bye.